If you ever sat in a meeting thinking, didn't we already talk about this last week? This video is for you. Because the same conversations repeat in teams all the time. Same topic, same concerns, same let's circle back. You leave the meeting, a week passes, and the exact same discussion shows up on the calendar again. And at that point, nobody should be surprised. Today, I'm going to give you 3 simple scripts you can start using this week so you never have the same meeting twice. These are the same phrases I give to leaders and managers when their teams feel stuck in those, repetitive conversations. And the interesting thing is, this pattern doesn't only happen in meetings. It happens everywhere. Families revisit the same planning discussions. Friends try to coordinate something, and then they keep rehashing the same options. Couples repeat the same decisions because nobody ever clarified the actual outcome. The conversation feels finished, but the alignment never actually happened. And that's the real reason conversations repeat. Not disagreement, misalignment. Most repeating meetings happen because 3 things are missing. The purpose of the conversation was never clearly defined. Drift wasn't corrected while the discussion was actually happening. And the conversation ended without anyone naming what happens next. That's exactly the type of breakdown the SYNC framework is designed to prevent. SYNC stands for surface meaning, yield space, name alignment, and confirm next steps. Now, you don't need to memorize the whole framework to fix most meetings, because the 3 scripts that I'm about to show you, they cover the biggest gaps that cause conversations to repeat. So let's start with the first one. Script 1, set the frame. Most meetings drift before they even begin, not because people are unfocused, but because they walked into the conversation with completely different expectations. One person thinks the meeting is for brainstorming. Another thinks the goal is making a decision. Another one assumes the meeting is just for updates. So when the discussion starts, the conversation moves in 3 different directions all at the same time. The simplest way to prevent this is to define the purpose immediately. At the beginning of the meeting, say something like this. All right, here's what we're trying to accomplish in this conversation. The goal is to decide between option A and option B. We're not trying to solve every, related issue today. If something comes up that doesn't move us towards that decision, we're going to park that for later. Now, something important just happened, right? Everyone in the room knows what success looks like for that conversation. And once the purpose is defined, it becomes much easier to recognize when the conversation drifts away from it. This step connects to 2 parts of SYNC, surface meaning and name alignment. You're surfacing what the conversation actually means, and then aligning everyone around that same objective even before the debate begins. Without that alignment, conversations wander. With it, discussions become dramatically more focused. And in my Communication Refined workbook, there's actually a simple conversation worksheet that helps you define the purpose before you walk into the room, so you don't have to improvise that clarity in the moment. Now, let's talk about what happens when the meeting starts drifting anyway, because it will. Script number 2, reset the drift. Even well-run meetings, they drift. Someone introduces a related issue. Someone else shares an example. And then a 3rd person, they propose a whole different idea. And suddenly the group is solving something completely different than what the meeting was meant to decide. Most leaders notice this, but they don't interrupt it. They let that conversation keep going. And before the long meeting ends without the original decision ever being made. So when that conversation starts drifting, use this reset line. There's something similar. Let me pause us for a second. We said the goal was deciding X. Right now, we're talking about Y. Can we connect how Y helps us decide X? This line works because it doesn't shut anyone down. You're not dismissing that idea. You're reconnecting the discussion to the purpose of the meeting. You're asking the group to explain how the current topic helps reach the decision. If it does, great. If it doesn't, the group will usually recognize that pretty quickly. This step reflects the yield space part of sync. Instead of rushing forward while misalignment grows, you slow down that conversation just enough to check our direction. And that small pause, that often saves the meeting from turning into a completely different discussion. The same reset works outside of work too. Imagine a conversation about weekend plans. This happens to me all the time. Suddenly someone starts talking about schedules, chores, responsibilities. The conversation explodes into 10 topics. Instead of letting that happen, someone says, or can say, hold on, we drifted. We're deciding on what to do Saturday. Not the whole week, not the whole weekend, just Saturday. That's instant clarity, right? Now let's look at the script that prevents the meeting from happening again next week. Script number 3, exit with clarity. This is the step most meetings skip. The conversation ends. Someone says, okay, yeah, I think we're good. And then everyone leaves. But nobody actually defined what good means. So people walk away with significantly different interpretations of what they agreed to, which then means that next conversation or that next meeting is going to start off with confusion. So instead, close the meeting with maybe something like this. All right, before we wrap up, I want to make sure we're aligned. John, you'll send the proposal draft by Wednesday. Sarah, you'll review the numbers and confirm the budget by Friday. If anything blocks you, who should you reach out to? Then ask one final question. Does anyone have a different understanding of what they're responsible for? That question, powerful, because that surfaces misalignment before people leave the conversation. This step represents the confirm next steps part of sync. You translate alignment into ownership, who does what and by when. Once those expectations are named clearly, the meeting rarely needs to happen again. Now, if these scripts seem simple, that's because they are, but the difference between effective meetings and frustrating ones usually comes down to whether someone is willing to say these lines out loud. In my Communication Refined workbook, I break down the patterns that cause conversations to repeat and provide those fill-in-the-blank prompts so you can practice these scripts before you're in the middle of those kind of conversations. So if you want structured prompts to help you apply these consistently, I've linked that below. But even without the workbook, here's a simple challenge. In your next meeting, try just one of these scripts. Set the frame at the start, reset the drift when it happens, or close the conversation by defining exactly who owns what next. Even one of those changes how meetings function. Because once alignment and ownership are clear, conversations are going to move forward instead of looping. And if you want to understand the full framework behind these scripts, watch my video on the Sync Communication Reset, where I break down the 4 steps that keep conversations aligned from the start.